Hello and thanks for joining us here on France 24 for France in Focus. This week coming to you from perhaps the world's most recognisable monument, the Eiffel Tower. Completed in March 1889, it ruled supreme for 4 decades as the world's tallest structure. And during the last century and a quarter, some 250 million people have been to visit. But as we're about to see, it wasn't always universally loved, nor was it still intended to be standing 127 years after it was built.
It's the French capital's most iconic landmark, drawing in some 25,000 tourists a day. Known for its striking views of Paris, the Eiffel Tower means something different to each and every one of its visitors.
The Eiffel Tower means to me is romance, beautiful, sexy, freedom, France.
The Eiffel Tower to me means love, romance, sexy as well.
To me, it means happiness. It symbolizes France, and also it means love.
Constructed in 1889 and standing at 324 meters high, the Eiffel Tower was the tallest man-made structure of its time. Since, historians have unearthed one of the Iron Lady's biggest misconceptions. It wasn't Gustave Eiffel that designed the tower, but 2 designers who worked for him.
It started off as a project of 3, and then he purchased it from others, hence the name Eiffel. Let's not forget what it's called. It's because he purchased the project, and it was in the terms of the contract, which meant he had the right to tap into the opportunity.
The Iron Giant cemented Eiffel's name in history. Since its unveiling, it's had a fresh coat of paint 19 times, thanks to these acrobatic painters.
These iron mountaineers, these tower climbers, working their way from the top as they should.
And the colour has changed several times, from red to ochre and finally to the bronze of today. Another tale of the tower, the spiral staircase with its over 1,700 steps to the summit platform.
From the bottom to the top, there are 1,792 steps. 1792 was the year the First Republic of France was established.
Sketching the tower took some 4,000 square meters of paper, an architectural feat which made the great-great-grandson of Gustave Eiffel a proud man.
He didn't need to make any modification to the original plans. It's incredible. It came together like a toy.
At the time, Eiffel family members claimed different parts of the tower.
His brother, who was a doctor, encouraged him to let him use the 3rd floor for people who had breathing problems.
The Iron Lady even contributed to science.
From its first floor, a now forgotten inventor tried to prove that man could fly like a bird. It was a tragic attempt. The primitive parachute did not open. It was also here where the first experiments with wireless telegraphs took place.
Slammed at the time of its launch by critics and nicknamed the solitary riddled suppository, today it's hard to imagine Paris without the Eiffel Tower.
Well, we're now on the first floor of this 324-metre structure, and to tell us more about it, I'm joined now by historian, architect and engineer Bertrand LEMOINE. Thank you so much for speaking to France 24. This tower was built in over a period of about 2 years. It wasn't supposed to last more than about 20 years. How is it that it's become a permanent feature on the Paris skyline? What saved it?
It was built in a kind of a hurry because it was, of course, to be the main feature of the 1889 World Exhibition, which was not the first in Paris, which would celebrate, of course, the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. And then this building was just to stay for 20 years because the building, the land on which it is built, belonged to the city of Paris.
So why wasn't it then dismantled after 20 years?
It tried to show that this tower has some usefulness. He conducted some scientific experiments on the tower, for example, on meteorology. He tried to test shapes alongside the cable to see how the wind would react with the shapes. But finally, eventually, what gave the real reason to keep the tower was to use the tower as a support for a big antenna, for the radio transmission. And with the height of the tower, you would communicate a long distance.
The Eiffel Tower, as its name would suggest, is the most important work by Gustave Eiffel, but it's not the only one, is it? Tell us a little bit about some of his other major achievements.
Yeah, Eiffel, before being a tower, such a big monument, of course, has a very strong experience, both as an engineer, he was trained in the École Centrale de Paris, one of the main engineering schools in France, but also he created his own firm at the age of 32, in 1864. And so he built a lot of things. He built bridges, railway station, industrial installations, roofs, iron roofs, and so on. A lot of iron structures, and also accompanying the development of the railway system in France.
You come here very often. Is there one thing that makes you just in awe of Gustave Eiffel every time you come to the Eiffel Tower? Is there one thing about this structure that just leaves you speechless?
You see, it's so light structure. It's so tenuous. It's not really much thing, and it's raised very high, giving an impression of stability. And when you get up by the stairs, up to the second floor, after that you have to take the elevator, you really feel you are in the middle of something very light, and that gives really a kind of paradoxical impression of really being on something solid, but as well on something very light and aerial, I would say.
People come from right across the globe to visit the Eiffel Tower. 7 million people every single year. Take that number and multiply it by the entry fee and you'll see that this place generates a handsome income. Let's take a closer look now and see how the numbers stack up.
Is the Eiffel Tower profitable? It cost almost 7.8 million francs to build, the equivalent of 32 million euros today. Building an exact replica now, with the benefit of 127 years of technological advances, would come in a little under 28 million euros. 1 million on the 18,000 pieces of metal, and the rest on construction fees. But that's without taking into account the cost of the land, or indeed its tourism value. As the quintessential symbol of Paris, the Eiffel Tower is the world's most visited paid-entry monument. It attracts 7 million visitors every year, 80% of them foreign tourists. Ticket prices range from 3 to 17 euros. And it's also possible to take the stairs, 704 steps to the second floor. But if you want to get to the top, you'll need to take the lift. On a clear day, 276 meters off the ground, you can see for 60 kilometers in all directions. The lifts travel the equivalent of 2.5 times round the world in just 1 year. Upkeep costs, meanwhile, aren't to be sniffed at, with maintenance operations occurring year-round. The paint job alone is redone every 7 years. That's some 250,000 square meters to cover, using 60 tons of paint over 18 months. But the Eiffel Tower still makes a handsome profit, with an annual turnover of 78 million euros.
Well, as well as being a radio and television beacon, the Eiffel Tower is also a beacon of light, with twin searchlights at its mast and some 20,000 light bulbs at its sides, which enable it to sparkle on the hour for a couple of minutes after dark. Well, as we're about to see, the light display isn't always the same. It also changes and adapts according to major world events.
From the moment she rose from the ground, the Eiffel Tower was a colourful beacon in Paris's skyline, painted all in red.
Gustave Eiffel invented a lighting system that was powered by gas. Electricity was only used for the 2 mobile headlights that were used to illuminate either the Parisian monuments or the pavilions of the World Expo.
At the beginning of the 20th century, the lighting went fully electric with 5,000 bulbs built into the steel structure. Then from 1925 to 1926, André Citroën put his name in lights on the centre of the building. The following year, a delicate web of lacy illuminations for the exhibition of arts and techniques. But the Second World War brought darkness, as its twinkling lights were turned off and remained so until the end of the century. As the clock struck midnight on December 31st, 1999, the tower sparkled in a blaze of blue and gold. The lights were back on as 20,000 extra bulbs pop and fizzle on the hour after nightfall, to the delight of its many visitors.
It just makes you happy.
To make sure the lighting's just as it should be, this man keeps a close eye on things with his camera.
I photograph the lamps that flicker on the Eiffel Tower to make sure they're all working properly.
Then the photographs are carefully examined.
16, 17, 18, 19, 19th panel. So the system tells me that there's an electrical fault. I know where it's happening, but I can't tell if it's a lamp, a connector, or short circuit.
These steeple jacks have been dispatched to make repairs, climbing 150 meters above ground to do so.
I'll pass you the ropes and you hook them in?
The most difficult thing is the conditions, the weather. It's important to check that all the equipment's secured. There's a whole procedure to follow to avoid errors, because there's no room for mistakes when you're working on the Eiffel Tower.
Since the year 2000, the tower's broadened its colour palette, changing its stripes depending on the occasion. Bathed in blue when France took over the presidency of the European Union in 2012, green for the COP21 Environmental Summit, and black, snuffed out after the deadly terrorist attacks in Paris in January 2015. The Eiffel Tower's big day, though, is the July 14th national holiday, when the Iron Lady is lit up from every angle by a symphony of fireworks.
And we leave you here at the top of the Eiffel Tower for this edition of France in Focus. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon here on France 24.